Well, let's now turn to the advisory, and the number of financial advisors has stabilised after several years of falls amid new qualification requirements. Padua Wealth data showing the number of advisors has dropped from almost 28,000 in 2018 to just over 15,000 by the end of last year. Let's get some more detail. We're joined by Matthew Esler, the Co-Chief Executive of Padua Solutions. Matthew, welcome back.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me back.
So, look, this certainly is a legacy, I guess, of the Royal Commission into the financial services and so on, which saw a decimation, really, wasn't it, of the advice space. So are we seeing a recovery now?
Yeah, we are seeing a recovery since 2018, really, where you had that peak of nearly 28,000 advisors. We've seen that come down, but since 2022, it's stabilised quite significantly. So in 2022, there was about 15,800 advisors, and it's continued to fall to about 15,000 and just 15,080 or so on at the moment. But what we're seeing is really good growth. So the growth numbers, there's about 569 advisors joined last year, and that was the biggest number of new entrants since 2018. But we've sort of seen the sector sort of stabilise. From what was a massive fall from 28,000 down to 15,000 or so.
Given the increased regulations that were imposed on the sector, that was seen as being overly onerous perhaps for many and dissuaded advisors from actually joining. Have you now got over that? Why are they coming back?
So it's quite interesting. There was a combination of things. There was the Royal Commission, and then there was the financial advisor exam requirements, and so that was a large reason why you saw a dramatic fall in the number of advisors coming through. And the most, even in the last month, because the sort of changes from 1 January this year has meant that there was another 440 left in December. So those changes are largely have passed through now, and the growth in advisors is going to come from a number of different places. Interestingly, there's only 15,000 advisors on the register, but there's 20,000 advisors that have passed the exam. So there's a cohort of those advisors that have retired, obviously, since the exam requirements came in. But there's also those that have actually passed the exam that aren't practicing as advisors. So there's an ability for some of those to come back. And interestingly, it's probably one of the biggest supply-demand disequilibriums in financial services. And I think the next big wave of growth will come from the advisors that are actually in the market at the moment, being able to be more efficient and more ability to scale up their advice through technology. And I talked last time about the rise of the advice platform, and being able to leverage technology in advice to actually enable you to produce more high quality advice for more Australians is going to be key.
Well, talk us through that unmet demand for advice and the opportunity that presents. And you talk about the advice gap. Is that being closed? What is the demand out there at the moment?
It's huge. And like I said, it's a huge opportunity for financial advisors that are currently in the market and those that are looking to join the financial advice space. Interestingly, there's about 10% of Australians that currently pay for advice. But there's about 40% that want advice. And so that difference, the 30% difference there is really accessibility and affordability. And what we've seen is the education standards came in, which led to the fall in advisor numbers. But at the same time, the quality of advice standards rose, which made it more expensive and more time consuming to produce the advice. And so it meant that in the more recent times, we've actually seen accessibility and affordability become more difficult than better. But as I mentioned before, the technology that's coming through now in the advice space is really enabling advisors to engage members in that discovery stage. So there's really I break it down into 3 components. The first part is when an advisor sees a client, they need to understand their existing position. And so that's the discovery phase. And then the second phase is when they're recommending strategies. And then the third stage is implementation and then ongoing support and compliance. So in all 3 of those stages, we're seeing different feature applications appear that sort of try and do one of those things, or different different features within that space. But what I think is really going to change the game is advice platform that actually covers the end to end, and we're seeing that come through now.
So with that advent of technology, particularly the use of AI, are we likely to see those fees perhaps become more affordable, given that appears at least to be a major disincentive for those seeking advice?
Totally. So there's 15,000 advisors, there's 2.7 million, call it, that are paying for advice. So it's about an average of around 150 or so, and most advisors that have sort of been operating under the, let's call it the old analog model, I like to refer to it as.
Yeah.
They can really only look after around 100 to 150 clients maximum. With the advent of advice platform and technology that really reduces the amount of time needed to capture existing information, reducing the amount of time needed to enable recommendations and then push digital advice out, it means that those advisors can sort of move up to around 300 plus clients, which really changes the game in terms of accessibility and affordability.